What's up, banana bunch? Bunch? Bunch?
Welcome to the Jungle Gyms podcast. What's up, Banana Bunch? You know what time it is? It's time for another episode of the Jungle Gyms podcast. I'm your host, Mark. Welcome to the show. If you're listening to the audio-only version, I appreciate your love and support. And of course, if you want to get a little more engaged, join us over on YouTube where you can actually watch along as well. Right now, I'm actually coming to you from the wine cellar here in the Fairfield store. You can see it's a very moody, cool room. There's a lot of very fancy wines, all kinds of cool stuff like that. We do tastings in here sometimes. The wine department's been on the show a ton. It's fun, so that probably gives you an idea of what's about to happen on today's show. So we've got some fun stuff, but before I get into that, let's talk about some upcoming events. I want to remind you, we've got one of our Jungle Gyms wine dinners coming up here on January 27th. It's going to feature foods from all over the world as well as international wine pairings. It should be great. And the weekend before that, coming up, the week of this episode releasing, we are doing our cigar customer appreciation event from 1 to 6 p.m. on Saturday, January 21st, over at the Oscar Station, which is here at Fairfield. It's the building with all the snakes on the outside of it. Highly recommend you check that out. They're going to have vendors from all kinds of different cigar companies, all kinds of fun stuff for you. I want to keep you in the know, so jump in, join us, join the loop, whatever it takes. You pick your own verbiage and vernacular. I love V words. Okay, moving on. This week's episode was really fun for me. You know, we've done a lot of wine content on the show before, and I know I've gotten some great feedback on that. And I had a really cool opportunity here, twofold, where I finally got to bring in our one of our department managers, Ed, onto the show. He's been a long-time staple of the craft beer and wine community here in Cincinnati, you know, and as legend tells, he was one of the first people in town to really get everyone on the craft beer train back when, for many of you, you may not remember this, but back when craft beer was not ubiquitous like it is now, right? You couldn't get it in a regular grocery store. You could get it at a place like Jungle Gym. So very cool. But Ed hit me up and was like, hey, I've got the Winemaker of the Year, Brewer, coming in here, and he's bringing along Master Sommelier Larry O'Brien, and we should have a lot of fun. And so, you know, for someone like me, I'm fun, I'm light, I'm outgoing. I really get a little nervous in those situations when I get a true expert in a field that's sort of like a, how should I say, I don't want to say, highbrow, I think is a good word for it. I get excited and maybe a little concerned. I'm like, can I hang? And you'll hear me joke about this with them. However, the reason I was so excited about this episode is both Greg and Larry opened my eyes, and I hope will open yours too, to hopefully a new future of wine, because their message is really fun here, that they're really just trying to get people, much like us here at Jungle Gyms, right, to expand their horizons, try all kinds of stuff, find out what you love, and then do the things you love, drink the things you love. So, look, I'm not going to bury this any further like I always do. I say that every week. It doesn't matter. You know, I love burying things. But I really hope you enjoyed this conversation, and it was a really great opportunity. So thank you so much, Greg. Thank you so much, Larry, for this. I appreciate your time. And everything we got to taste after this interview was delicious. Appreciate that. All right, see you on the other side of the interview, everyone. I struggle every time with a good intro here, so I'm going to start by welcoming Ed to the show, because Ed, honestly, I know I've pressed you on this since I started here, but I'm really glad you came in.
Mark, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, it's been fun. I mean, look, Ed, you're one of those, you're like a legend in the bringing in craft beer and making that such a popular thing here in Ohio, so we appreciate everything you've done.
Thanks. I'm on my 20th year here at Jungles, and it's been a lot of fun. And
legend in your own time.
There you go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Ed, when you came to me with this, I was like, this sounds like a great idea. But I thought I'd twofold. I mean, obviously, we get some really interesting people coming through to do tastings and other events here. So I thought I'd let you introduce these gentlemen to the world.
Absolutely. We've got a couple great guys here tonight. We have got we have Larry O'Brien, which is a master somm. With Jackson Family Estates, and we've got Brewer with Brewer Clifton. So,
welcome, gentlemen. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled to be here.
Yeah. Well, Greg, we'll start with you here. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you've got going on.
Well, first of all, I want to just thank you both for having me back here. You know, I think I first called on Jungle Gyms probably 15, 20 years ago. And to come back, it was a super highlight of my trip. I just came out for a couple of days to the Midwest.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I worked Maui on Friday, and then I just came out to Detroit Tuesday and ripped down here, and I'm going home tomorrow morning. But it it's a very, very important situation to be here and to be amongst the caliber of people and other wines that are here. It's a real honor. So I mean, thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm from Los Angeles originally. Kind of latchkey kid in the 70s. You know, raised myself, eyeliner, Depeche Mode, Cure.
We're going to get along just fine. I'm still wearing my key around my neck.
For sure. Yeah, nice. And then went to school, UC Santa Barbara. Yeah, and my first career path was teaching. I was going to teach French. So I taught French at UCSB. And then I got a job in a local tasting room. I was 21, living in a fraternity house. I didn't know Chardonnay was a grape. I saw an ad in a newspaper, $5.50 an hour, no experience necessary, willingness to learn. And I thought, wow, $5, drink wine, free crackers on the bar, give tours, done,
Yeah.
So I applied. I didn't get the job the first time, but I wanted it so bad. I walked in the winery and I was mesmerized. So I kept applying, following up, manager, knocking on the door, flowers, candy, whatever I did.
Right.
Someone else quit, thankfully. That's why I'm talking to you right now. And so I owe that person the world. I don't know who that was, but,
if you're out there, thank you.
For sure. Yeah, wine for life. And
that's binding. Maybe I'll take it back.
Yeah. But get it at Jungle Gyms. No, and then I head over heels. I got the job, and it was 31 years ago, and it's literally my identity now. This line of work. I became their assistant winemaker about a year after, 92. Mm-hmm. And I love the totality of the business, front of the house, back of the house, the monastic kind of repetitive nature of production.
Okay.
The fun kind of sexy stuff, traveling around and meeting people and drinking champagne and rooftops and penthouses, and that's cool. And
right, huge fan.
Yeah, for sure, always. Yeah, actually, it turns out that's got better than the production. And that's that. And then ultimately, I'm talking a lot, sorry, but ultimately,
that's the whole point of this. Yeah.
But ultimately, what I'm, as I've gotten a little bit older, I love that I've remained very faithful and loyal to Santa Barbara. I love other wine regions. I see them all the same. People ask me all the time, like, how'd you pick Santa Barbara? I didn't. I was a college kid and I got a job to drink wine. I mean, it wasn't like a choice.
Sure.
But, looking back, I see them all the same. Hill country of Texas, New Zealand, Burgundy, everywhere. They're the same qualitatively. They're beautiful people. They're driven people. Yeah. Interesting grapes I've never heard of. It's cool. And they're all equal, And I've never touched fruit from outside, and I think when you really surrender to something and you give in to something and you really espouse yourself to somewhere, you can be vulnerable with it. You think about a significant other, you think about a surf spot, you think about a fishing hole, you think about a guitar you like. Yeah. You can kind of give in and be raw with that. And that's something that I enjoy at home, because for 31 years, the area has never let me down. We all have better days than others, just like with a couple, therapy every now and then, some moody days, sleep on the couch if you're really an idiot. But by and large, that person has your back. And Santa Rita Hills and Santa Barbara County has always had my back. And so the wines we raise are very raw, they're very vulnerable, they're very neutral. And ultimately, I'm just looking to transmit the ocean and our landscape around the world through the wines. That's really my goal.
So beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I mean, what I find so fascinating about meeting people like yourself is that ultimately we're all kind of artists in our own lane, right? And so I joke that I'm the passion wrangler here, but it's great. Like, I love having these moments where I'm just like, wow. And, I have a casual understanding of wine, which is why I'm glad Ed's here too, just to back me up. I'm like, don't let me flounder too bad. But, learning all these things, it's been a really cool opportunity for me to meet people like yourself to honestly really learn the landscape.
Right.
So maybe leading into this, one of the questions I have, would you have advice for somebody that's like fresh into the wine world as far as tasting? And this will be a question for you too, Master Som. But
his advice is really good advice. And he hit on it last night, and I hope you say some of the same stuff.
Yeah, but what would be something that somebody that's trying to enter this world a little bit here?
Well, just call and we'll answer.
Right. You're live on the Dr. Wine podcast.
Yeah. Let me tell you about how to get into wine. No, that was funny. That was cool. Wine, it's interesting. Wine is one of those few things where people bring a lot of fear and permission and apprehension. If you think about it, and I think the industry has done that to itself, unfortunately, over centuries, perhaps. But wine's primitive, it's barbaric. It's been around for 1 billion years. It makes itself. It's like water, fire, wine, Tarzan. I mean, it's very primitive. Jungle Gyms, and no, it's very primitive, and for real. And people are scared of it. It's interesting. From the first day at that tasting bar, I was only 21, but thankfully I was smart enough. I dropped out of grad school, but I was smart enough to realize that as soon as we can neutralize that insecurity around wine. We can quell people's concerns. We can kind of encourage them to let their guard down. Then actually that the knowledge can begin, right? Because when you think about it with wine, people say all the time, they apologize for not knowing about it. It happens all the time. You just did it a little bit. And then people use the word should all the time. That word should is embedded in almost every wine question. When should I drink this? What should I drink it out of? What temperature should I? What should I? Should. Why is that? Because there's fear of doing it wrong, right? When should you wear leather? When should you have a guitar on the wall? When should you have Slim Jims whenever you want to? You don't fear doing it wrong, right?
Wine should never be intimidating.
No, but it is, you know. And so as soon as we can, again, not dumb it down, not make light of it. It's a cool, serious, awesome, thought-provoking, neat thing, right? So I'm not
learn how to appreciate it at its highest level, but in a fearless way.
Yeah, in a fearless way. Because think about it, like I've had enough therapy in my life that like, there's like the different parts of your brain, right? So if you're calm and composed and confident, you can be creative. You can kind of go outside of the box. You're there. If it's more fight or flight, then that part of your brain like shuts down, literally shuts down, and then it's like survival mode, right? So if you're fearful of misstepping, fearful of pouring it in the wrong glass or having it with the wrong food, I mean, it's talking about ridiculous things to be scared of, then the appreciation, the enjoyment of it will be clipped a little bit, yeah? And so if it kind of like, if you can get people to drop their shoulders around it and not be so freaked out and see it as something more real and see it as produce and see it as primitive and see it as basic, then I think it's helpful. And then once you're there and you're like, cool, let's check it out. Like, I prefer that one. Oh, that one's cool. I had this with that. I really enjoyed it. I had it 9 days later and I preferred it over awesome.
Yeah.
No, every answer is right? Everyone gets an A with wine, right? And so, once that can be kind of fostered and driven into people a bit more, that's really the best way to kind of bring people into it. Yeah. So they're not freaked out by it. And wine's never been better at all price points, right? Even in my 30-odd year career from 91, and we can all attest to, from 91 to now is like light years.
The golden age.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we can't go wrong. All of us could grab any bottle off any shelf and open it right now and we'd all be happy. Would it transport us? Maybe, maybe not. But it would be super yummy. And we'd have a glass and joke and laugh. And so it's really a beautiful time to get into wine.
Yeah.
But, with that said, without pretext, without fear, without apprehension. Yeah.
That's the most beautiful answer I could have expected to get. So good call. And it's really funny because today's been a fun day for me in that regard. The two things in the food world that I've kind of had a little of that apprehension, anxiety about are coffee and wine, which were the two main features of my day, right? Because they were both... excuse me, how should I say, they're like sort of specialized ends of the industry, right? Like if you are a coffee person, you probably know a lot about like, oh, tell me about these different roast types. Same with wine, right? Like, and I'm sure you both could speak at length about all the specificity of there. And so for someone like me who is just a casual, like I want to understand this, but I recognize there's sort of a skill level required to really grasp it. Maybe to tie it back into you were asking what the show is about. The show for me is about getting over my anxiety publicly.
In addition.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I honestly cut my therapist out a few times a month now. I was like, this is working out all right. But no, all kidding aside, but it is that thing where I think a lot of it really does come down to an educational end, right? Because I think for a lot of people, having someone like yourself say, this is something that we should just approach it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like nobody's going to attack you. And anybody that would, and just don't deal with them anymore. Like be more afraid of that person than the actual.
Those people exist.
For sure.
But you have no reason to pay attention to them.
Yeah.
Like you can just ignore the person who's using their knowledge, experience as a foil to keep you at bay. Those people, don't hang around those people. Hang around the people that use their knowledge to give you a big embrace and share that with you. Approach your love of food and wine and spirits and beer
and coffee
and tea and tobacco and perhaps other recreational narcotics. There are opportunities,
of course,
with your medulla oblongata, right? Use your lizard brain. Do not use your prefrontal cortex. Eventually, maybe because you want to understand why I enjoyed that. What about that I like so much? Where did that come from? I love that character, aroma, the flavor, the texture. I loved it. How did it get there? Let me try to understand it a little more cerebrally.
Yeah.
But find that enjoyment.
Right.
Absolutely using, your lizard brain. That's don't make it complicated.
Yeah, and also and be true to yourself. I think again to follow up on Larry's point, if sometimes it's like I should like this, like I want to like this. I'm embarrassed that I don't like that, and it's really interesting because our wines are raised in this very neutral way. So going back to your coffee thing, like it's very powerful and Californian driven, but with a very Zen-like kind of dread of the imposition mindset, right?
I love it.
And so that's that. So if you're profiling me, and I love coffee, I drink coffee all day long, but hear me out.
Yeah.
If you're profiling Greg Brewer, you might say, okay, I bet he likes, plantation specific, non-roasted, total hipster, single speed bike, peg pant coffee, right? And I don't care for that so much. I love coffee that my coffee roasting friends are like, I can't believe you drink. I mean, the ones that have that weird bravado are like, I can't believe you drink that. It's like roasted 9 times. You can't taste anything anymore. Right. That gives me pleasure, and it always has. And that's what I drink. And I'm not trying to start a fight, but I'm like, hey, and I don't apologize anymore. I used to. I'm like, I'm sorry, I like the dark roast. I know that's not what I'm supposed to like. And even I get caught up in that.
Yeah.
Instead of I love oak, I love this, I love Cabernet, I like White Zinfandel, whatever, it's great, but own what you like, because otherwise it's a really weird way to live. If you're consuming something you don't really dig, because you think you should, that's to be avoided.
and one of my first questions to our customer, they come in and they say, well, what should I have with this? And I say, first of all, tell me what wines you like.
Yeah.
So let me suggest something that you're going to like. It's not about what goes the best with the meal, because if it's something you don't like, you're not going to enjoy it. So what do you like first?
Of course.
And that's exactly what the point you're making is.
100%, Ed, 100%. And
drink what you like. And
adjacent to that is have a sense of adventure. Don't get stuck in a rut like a little old lady from Pasadena driving her car to church every Sunday. Right. No, man, burn the wheels off that thing 7 days a week. Try new things. Be adventurous. Try something that you don't think you'd like, and God knows, maybe you'll find that you do like it. It's the world of wine, beer, spirits. We could start talking about dry aged beef, wet aged beef, corn finished, grass fed, free range, blah. We could get into innumerable discussions about any gustatory pleasure. Sure. But have a sense of adventure. Be willing to strike out to try something new. And maybe you'll find something new. Own what you like, but be willing to like something else.
Absolutely.
Something new.
Especially, and with wines too, and Ed, to follow up on your part, it's like, I keep saying part instead of point, is like I'm a pescatarian, my wife's a vegetarian, she's a Grenache producer, we do a lot of Chardonnay and Pinot. We drink a lot of Chardonnay and Pinot and Grenache at home. Why? Because we have it. It's like low-hanging fruit, it's half full bottle, take it home, it's free, right? Scrambled eggs, tofu, rice, all works great. All those things work great, right? So there's like cliche things like, Pinot Noir and duck, salmon, steak with whatever. Throw all that out the window, to Larry's point, and something that I was encouraging people, particularly during the pandemic, and certainly any kind of bringing wines home and enjoying them at home setting, is that open a bunch of things. People sometimes too are like, let's open a bottle. Great, it's gone. What should we open next? Like, go breadth. Wine's never going to hurt you. And as it opens up over the course of several days, week, whatever, it holds up way longer than most people think. And then every day it's going to change a little bit. So that one bottle is almost like you're seeing different facets of that wine. You're getting like more wines out of that single bottle. And how fun is that at night? Because then you can say, oh wow, like if you're into this and maybe into that, maybe try this one out too. Open all of them. And so many people laugh, oh my gosh, that's way too much. We can't drink that much in a night. And say, that's not what I'm saying. Like, little glass of each. Change the sequence. Start with red, end with white. Try something that you might not think might work that great with that food. Maybe it'll blow your mind. Maybe it won't. But give it a shot. And it just makes everything cooler. Instead of like, oh, we had this wine on Monday, this wine on Tuesday. You have 5 wines 5 days a week, right? But then you have like 25 different experiences. Yeah. Right? You're just multiplying that exposure, to Larry's part.
And this is the most comfortable I've ever been around wine people in my entire career. I mean, genuinely though, look, it is one of those things that I think I maybe speak for the public a little bit, that like there's some apprehension around it. Look, I'm in a room with a master somm. There's 300 of you, and if they want another one, you have to like cut their head off like they're a Highlander.
No,
right?
Not quite that. We don't ask for body parts. We don't ask for blood oaths. Pass a challenging exam that's academic and taste oriented and service oriented, and you too can become a master sommelier. It's hard. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not an astrophysicist.
But you also got to be able to talk, and Larry does very good at that.
Yeah. No, you
I
both.
breathe through my nose. Long talking's a good thing.
I put my pants on both legs at a time right now. No, but it is a thing where that combination of, and for both of you really, like the personality and just being personable in general and opening this up. This is the first time I think I've ever heard anybody talk about it this way, which is so refreshing. I mean, look, for me, I'm in here reading all of your accolades leading up to this, like Ed sending me these notes. I was like, am I smart enough for this conversation? Right? You know, I'm saying it in jest, of course. Of course, I'm brilliant.
Obviously.
But it is that thing where like going into it, I was like, oh, I hope I'm good for this. And then you guys like walk in the room, everybody's super cool and relaxed and very open-minded. And I think maybe that's another thing I want to impress on the audience, that I'm wrong all the time. You can be wrong all the time too. And I think it's really important to shake those, not just to try new things, but also shake some of these preconceptions off where it's like,
all of them.
Yeah,
actually,
everything.
all of them.
You know what happens when you're wrong about wine?
What's that?
You have to drink your mistake.
Oh.
How bad is that? Like, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it's so bad you don't want to drink it, throw it down the drain. Who cares?
Right.
It's not a. It's the most fun avocation you could ever enjoy. It's inexhaustible. You could spend your life trying to understand the 20 regions of Italy that are in search of a country and never conquer it. That's just Italy. The world becomes, your travel log, your travel guide is your pursuit of wine. You want to go on a trip, go someplace where there's wine.
Yeah.
Well, there's not many places you can't go where there isn't wine. And generally where there's wine, there's food. And there's some unique, maybe it's unique and ethnic, maybe it was brought there. South Africa's this amazing melting pot with this crossroads of culture from African and Indian and European. And they've got wine and all of this weird ethnic blend, and wine comes together in ways you would have never thought possible. Go to Las Vegas and go to Lotus of Siam and have amazing Thai food with German Riesling. That wasn't even possible in the mid-20th century.
Yeah.
No one even thought about that. So the sense of adventure to me is paramount. Willingness to be wrong is paramount. And just enjoy it. Don't make it an academic study. Just make it a kind of a pursuit of pleasure.
Yeah, it's a Thursday night. Go have fun.
Yeah, and you can never, to echo Larry's comments, you can never know it all, and so again, sometimes people say, well, I thought you couldn't do that. I thought that whites didn't age. I thought you have to have whites first. I thought you do whites cold. Like all those weird things that maybe were written in a wine book 80 years ago, or someone told someone misleadingly at some point thinking they were cool. It's not cool, and it's all wrong. I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah.
Whites age tremendously well. I mean, they're just different colors of a grape, for goodness sakes, right? It's not like one is some hierarchically superior thing. There's different colors. I mean, it's as basic as that. Wine is, and it's a beautiful thing, and I just want kind of each new generation coming into it. I want everyone to feel kind of welcome and invited to the party, because it's a really cool one. It's a really neat one.
And it's a challenge. Right now, there's no doubt, as younger people come of drinking age, wine is literally the last thing on their mind.
Right.
Maybe it's craft beer, or maybe it's not craft. Maybe it's like it was for me, Genesee Cream Ale, or one brewery makes it best.
Yeah.
Maybe it's cannabis because it's widely accepted. Maybe it's bourbon because that's a cool thing.
Seltzer or whatever. I mean,
And all of those things don't come with the intimidation factor Greg's described so accurately. There's no intimidation factor with those things. They're user-friendly things.
Right.
Wine kind of comes with all this baggage that makes us a little fearful. And we have to wait for that 22, 28-year-old to, get a little older before they start to take wine seriously as a category. And there's nothing wrong with that. Discover us when you discover us, but it'd be so much more fun if we could get people sort of seeing wine as that adult beverage of choice a little earlier.
I love that. Well, and maybe I'll pose the same question I posed to Greg. Like, what would be some of your advice as somebody jumping in? Is it the same? Just be adventurous?
Yeah, it is absolutely be adventurous. Don't be afraid to ask for help. we tend to be intimidated, and when we are, we close down. Don't close down. Open up. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
Can you help me out? I want, the inside of my cheeks to be all chewy, puckery, dusty, and dry. I want the surface of my tongue to feel like my cat's tongue. Don't be afraid to describe things that you're experiencing. I want the sides of my tongue tingling and my salivary glands activated. Like, I want my mouth watering. Like, rather than us saying to you, this is a high tannin wine.
Right.
It's got medium body and it's got lower levels of acidity. Like, none of that means, who cares? I need you to tell me what you want.
Right.
And if you're free and easy about that, we are going to get you what you want.
Yeah.
Additionally, all prices are cool.
Yes.
Right? So never think that you need to pay anything out of any comfort zone to arrive at something that's very, very satisfying, right? And that candor is also important. So to come in here and say, I'm looking for a white wine, if it's like the first time, it's like you maybe stab in the dark. I'd like to spend $8, $10, $12 to $15. That doesn't matter at all. They're epic wines that Larry, just the two of us could like go in the parking lot and a master sommelier and someone who's made wine for 30 years and be thrilled and spend $15 back there.
I promise you, one of Ed's favorite things to do is, with all these suppliers coming at him every day, taste this, taste that. Ed, you got to try this. Ed loves finding that
value
$14.99 bottle of wine that
kills,
the only guy
completely
that's got it.
slays.
That's what gives him joy.
So do that and then have it and then be on, like, taste it, have it for a couple of days at home, whatever. Come back and say, oh my God, I love that. Like, what else is like that? Or I found it to be a little bit sweet. It was a little too overt. It was a little too, whatever it is. Okay, cool, awesome. And then, okay, try this, and it's this beautiful evolution, and every answer is right. I mean, that's the kind of exploration. But you need to start. You need to open the book,
right,
in order to start learning the story or reading the story.
Yeah,
and entrusting some, having a relationship with a store such as this. These experts that are on the floor waiting for someone to ask.
Yeah,
sure, we'll fill a car. Yes, we'll take a box to the car. Yes. Here's what you're looking for that you asked me for that you've heard about or you have every night on Thursdays, whatever. But you're these super experienced, trained people that taste way more wines than I do are waiting for that kind of question of actual guidance and service, right? And to not take advantage of it is a missed opportunity because it's sitting there right there for you.
And you make such a beautiful point about that. And one of my favorite things to do when I walk back in that department is kind of just watch you all work. And it sounds silly, but part of my job is such an experiential, take it all in and then what can I send back out? But it is really pretty magical to watch you guys work back there because you're always genuinely excited to explore this with people, which I think is so refreshing. It's not something, I think you all said it so well. I mean, that's not something that you get in a lot of other competing stores.
Have you bought a used car recently?
No, thankfully.
We're all very passionate about what we do, and that's a lot of fun. A little bit back on Brewer Clifton, Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
What's Santa Barbara do for the wine that Napa doesn't, or some of those things? I think our listeners would like to hear.
Of course, yeah. So Santa Barbara is really unique. When you think about Santa Barbara, I think with frequency, there are images of, the beach and resorts and Oprah and royalty and kids with balloons and cotton candy and making out on the beach. And that totally goes down. And Santa Barbara itself is awesome, right? It faces south. It's a very gentle Pacific. It's ideal. I'm not going to lie. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
When you go up the coast, you kind of go out west first, actually. It's a weird part of our coastline that kind of juts out. When you round the corner up by wine country, it's about a 45, 50-minute drive.
Okay.
It's still the Pacific Ocean, obviously, but it's a very different voice of the Pacific. I sometimes joke, if California had an equator, it would be kind of right about here, right? Okay. You round this bend, and the ocean is more savage. It's Alaska water. An ocean can be fun and playful. It can also be more savage and kind of contemplative. And up in our area where the ocean is, it's cold. There's whitecaps. There's different species of sharks. It's more like fleece. You're by yourself. You read poetry. You listen to Morrissey, whatever. And so that's kind of what it's about. And then our valley opens up due west onto this cold water. No, it's true. So it's Santa Barbara, but it's not like, yay, Santa Barbara. It's a cold Santa Barbara. And our valley very atypically opens up west onto this circumstance, breathing it in. Mm-hmm. The fog, the wind, everything. So we have ocean on two sides. The prevailing side is cold, and we're availing ourselves to it. Long season, very empty soils, a lot of sand, a lot of plankton fossils. We have this kind of desolate landscape in some ways, and coolness, which is also a rare juxtaposition. So this long, predictable season, long, predictable harvest season. And it enables us the opportunity to work with this fruit, and we kind of harvest it whenever we want. I pick fruit in December, for goodness sakes, regularly, right? I mean, it's like this long, drawn-out season, no rain, which is its own complication, but for, by and large, it's favorable, besides the drought stuff.
Right.
And
it's like within reason.
sweep that under, yeah. We all have our demons, don't we? And back to therapy. No, and,
Crank the Morrissey, let's go.
But that's really it. And so, within the whole Santa Barbara County, there's a lot of diversity. If you're near the ocean, it's freezing. If you're more inland, you can work with other grape varieties if those turn you on, like the Rhone things and Bordelaise things, cool. And my habitat's always out west, so for 31 years, I've only kind of worked on the west side where it's Chardonnay, Pinot, Syrah, but mostly Chardonnay and Pinot. That's a lot of intensity, a lot of kind of oceanic energy. Kind of brininess, if you will. And there are things, we're talking about wine too. Larry made other beautiful points when he was talking about how to articulate things. Like, I'm looking for this, it makes my tongue feel like this. With wines too, there's also sometimes, what should I be tasting? What should I be smelling? I'm like, I don't know. It's you. Like, you're going to super lay up, it's an A, you win, whatever you're smelling and tasting. And sometimes it's also, people need to be reminded, I think, or should be reminded, it's not necessarily like, don't look for something. If you're looking too hard, you won't find it, right? What does it remind you of? It can be secondary. It can be like it reminds me of a girl I had a crush on when I was in 3rd grade because her shampoo smelled like flowers. It smells, I've had wines before, it reminds me of my grandfather. And people, that's funny. I'm like, well, and then he wore Bengay. It's kind of mentholated and minty, but I wasn't like, I get menthol. It was like, whoa, grandfather. Or running down that path in Connecticut, visiting my dad after my folks divorced. And it was like wild berry bushes in New England. And I'm an LA kid that didn't know seasons existed.
Right.
But wines can transport you if you kind of like let them, not like, oh gosh, what am I getting?
Right.
You're not taking a test like for a master sommelier. You don't have to do that. You can just be like, oh my God, it reminds me of that Christmas wreath. It reminds me of that cigar that my grandfather, you know what I mean? And it can be so fun that way, and you can start conversation that way.
I think that's a beautiful note too, is that, and one of my big takeaways already is really just thinking of how to articulate what I am experiencing. Maybe that's another good piece of advice for people, is really to think about that.
The entire gustatory experience is the most pleasurable thing we do, aside from other thing we do that we're probably not going to talk about on this podcast.
However, we're after hours. Let's go.
Giving a voice to the experience, giving a voice to the aroma, the flavor, the texture, trying to create a voice so when I come see Ed again, I can say, man, I really loved that piece of the wine. Can we accentuate? Greg was alluding to this earlier. Giving it a voice helps us kind of come to grips with finding that, amplifying it, diminishing it, melding it with something else in another adventurous selection of wine. But it's sensorial. Mm-hmm. Wine is sensorial. Food is sensorial. It's sensual as well. And distinct ideas. But we're just trying to put words into this liquid that doesn't have a chance to speak it for itself, Speaker for the wine rather than speaker for the dead.
Yeah.
And people, when they're tasting wines, they're like, what am I tasting? Well, it's different for them as it is for me and for you, and we all taste something different. What is fun about wine is we all get the opportunity to taste it, see and then compare. And say, hey, do you taste that? And somebody says yes. Yeah. That's what's fun. That's what gets everybody all kind of, all happy and say, wow, I tasted that too.
And I hated it. Yeah. And Ed loved it. And but what the hell's going on? How's that possible?
I tasted it.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part of wine.
And it unifies.
Yeah.
It unifies, it creates community, ultimately. Yeah. Community with your partner, community with yourself. I mean, it causes you to pause. And even if you're by yourself, to kind of think about things and have your own dialogue. Mm-hmm. And then certainly it's a, camaraderie-esque, beverage, but to have that discourse, especially now, I think it's all the more important during an era where, because of phones and distraction, and I think people can kind of cocoon themselves a little bit too much in their own world.
Sure.
And hopefully it kind of opens those doors back up where you go to somebody else, like, oh, do you get that? Or, oh my God, I love that one. Oh, that was kind of weird for me. But you're talking. You're engaging in a very carnal way, because it's a very carnal kind of beverage.
Generally, we love to share what we love. Sometimes it's selfish and you're showing off. I got the bourbon that nobody else could get. I got the craft beer that nobody else could get, or that one crew in Burgundy that nobody else could get. And sometimes there's that sort of sharing. But if you really like something, you want to share it with those you love.
Yeah.
Because you want them to have that same level of enjoyment that you're getting.
Right.
Be a giver.
I love that. That's getting clipped out for that.
And also, with wines, it's people should never feel. I keep saying, I'm not trying to tell people what to do, but have any connection with the product that is meaningful to you. So there's the taste and that experience. It's also the memory. So you're traveling around and, oh my God, we love that spot. Or you can punctuate time, you can punctuate place. I met that person, he or she was awesome. Like they took us in the cellar and we met their dog and their pickup truck had a flat tire, whatever, cliche stories. But then you've got that story. So let that story be embedded in the pleasure of the wine, right? The wine is also amenable, speaking for wine now, is amenable to like having all those stories with it. And that's part of it. Why are some wines $1 billion and some are 10? Like, and some, is that wine really 1,000 times better than that one? Of course not. But there's a reason. There's a reason. Supply, demand, and all that stuff. Obviously, we can talk about business shit too. But stuff's too, sorry. But it's have the experience be part of it. Have the memory be part of it, because that can make it even more rich. Or remember that time we had that wine? Let's have that wine again, because we can go back to that time and reflect on that memory. I mean, life doesn't get any better than that. It's the best.
One of the hardest questions I always have is when the customer comes in and says, I would like this wine if you have it. And it's the one that my wife and I had on our honeymoon. And I might have the wine, I might have the same vintage, but I guarantee you it won't taste as well as it did then.
Yeah.
And that's an experience.
For sure. And the funniest thing, you get this too, I'm sure a lot too, like, oh, we were in Provence and we were barefoot and making out and eating eggplant or whatever. Yeah. And we got the rosé. We ship airport, customs, taxes. That rosé just doesn't seem to travel as well. And I'm like, yeah, the rosé is fine. As it turns out, it traveled just fine. Yeah, but now you're like paying bills, and like your internet doesn't work, and like whatever.
It's a different experience
for sure. Absolutely,
absolutely. C2 makes all the difference.
Oh, that's amazing. I love it. Yeah, sharing those memories. That's beautiful. Oh, this whole thing has been so beautiful. I'm just sitting here taken aback. You guys really, look, this is one of my favorite things about the job is having my eyes opened, and I can't thank you enough for doing that in the first place.
Thank you.
I know that everybody watching this will air after you're gone, but what, just to give the audience an idea, like what are they missing out on tonight? Like what are we gonna try? What's going on?
Well, we have 2 selections from Brewer Clifton Winery, which is a project I started about 27 years ago with $12,000. And just going for it. It's very guerrilla, very rocker in the 80s, like staple gunning flyers on, and lamp posts for gigs at clubs, and, selling wine out of the back of my car. And so the Brewer Clifton wine is Chardonnay and Pinot from Santa Rita Hills. And then additionally, there's a wine called Diatom, which is another Chardonnay project of ours, inspired by the plankton fossil in our area, very oceanic, very powerful, clean interpretation of Chardonnay, big and powerful, and also neutral and subtractive and contemplative that way. And so those 2 wines and those 3 wines.
Grand Marais Brut Rosé as well.
Oh yeah, from my friend up north in Oregon, Shane from Grand Marais, beautiful Brut Rosé. So some bubbles, why not?
Yeah,
holidays.
Sounds great. Yeah, I'm here.
And
Let's celebrate.
If our wines are lame, there's always that. So I'm going to be hitting that hard for sure.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And that's that. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be really fun, and just engaging with the guests that are going to come, and sharing our stories with them, and ideally, kind of bringing them into the mix, bringing them backstage with what we do, and so that they are, the association, hopefully I don't turn them off, but hopefully they've got that connection with me of like that memory, so it's not just a beverage anymore.
How fun wine is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, and how fun this place is. And again, the joy that a place like this can bring, because it's so welcoming. There's nothing threatening about this store. I mean, it's all about playfulness. I mean, fun. I mean, everything's here, and it's a crazy serious situation, and it's fun. You smile when you're looking around, and it's just a fun place. And I think that also helps everyone to kind of drop their shoulders and just enjoy the experience.
Yeah, it's a place that we can go and just kind of, kick back a little bit, try something new.
Yeah, and get
excited.
lost, probably.
Yeah. That's part of the jungle magic, get the map, call a SOS on the way out. We give every customer a flare gun just in case. Well, of course, thank you both for coming out and doing this.
Thank you.
Honestly,
thank you.
I've absolutely taken from both of you. I feel like you two should have a show, by the way. I would absolutely listen. You have such a beautiful and romantic way of speaking on the topic that really just made me feel so invited and welcome, and that's what this is all about, right?
Awesome.
Well,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome to join us for the rest of the show.
I think I probably will. It sounds good. I'm going to go open my mind and my palate.
Let's go
And maybe
taste
my
some.
wallet.
Let's go taste some great wines.
Yeah, it sounds
Awesome.
good to me.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much for putting this together.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate you. Yeah. Thanks for doing the show finally. This is one less awkward email I have to send now.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. Well, that's the show this week, folks. As always, if you enjoyed this, leave me an email at podcast@junglegyms.com. Or more importantly, I want some calls on the hotline because I've got some clips I'm going to play next week on the show. You can call me at 513-674-6855. Leave me your thoughts about the show. It's super anonymous, which is a lot of fun for you because you can say awful things to me. I want to again thank Ed Vinson and Greg Brewer, as well as Larry O'Brien, for joining me on the show. It was a lot of fun. I thought this is probably the most eye-opening wine episode we've done so far, and I hope a lot of you feel empowered to try it, much like I used to be scared of ordering coffee at coffee shops. Now, I barely know what's on the menu, but I've gotten a little more comfortable with it, and that's my goal here for you. So, okay, well, we got some fun stuff coming up. Make sure, again, if you haven't yet, subscribe to us on YouTube. Hit the little bell so you know when we put out a new video. We've been putting out bangers every week here. We got a really good run right now of some international sauce tier rankings. It's a lot of fun. I get to try a bunch of different sauces around the store because, you know what? I got to get rid of ketchup in all of our lives. That is my other personal goal. Okay, on that, I hope you all have a great week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening along. And in the meantime, I'll see you out here in the aisles. Aisles. The Jungle Gyms podcast is recorded in the WJJI studio inside Jungle Gyms International Market in Fairfield, Ohio. The Jungle Gyms podcast is produced and hosted by Mark Borison.